Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Esteemed company of guests that have been on my show multiple times. We need a jacket. Maybe it's a green jacket. Maybe it's a gold jacket. You were guest 14 on my show in 2019. You were guest 244 on the show in December of 2022. And here we are on whatever the heck day this is in November. I've lost track. Third time's a charm. Hung Lee, welcome back to the podcast.
Great to be here on the podcast. I guess you must be running out of guests, basically, to keep bringing all people back like myself.
I would reposition and reframe that another way, saying that I really enjoy certain guests, so I bring them back on the show.
I'm happy to be a filler, man. Happy to come in and help you fill out some content.
He's more of a filler. He's a bucket filler is one of the expressions in my school, because you're always adding value. And that's really what it's all about here. I think you just like to travel, and you found a job where you could just do that and get paid for it. What do you even do? Who are you? I don't think I've asked this question ever. Who is Hung Lee?
I don't ask these questions, man. You don't want to look too deep into this stuff. Just like forward, external, don't ask the big questions, man. But it's very seriously.
I'll be out of work.
I'm very lucky. I'm very fortuitous. I'm a person that is basically, I haven't designed this path. I've just like gone forward, and it's just happened to work out for me very well. Hopefully it's because I've been able to add some value to the industry in various ways. So
this guy's a legend. He hosted my stage when I was at Breakfast Nebworth for the first time over there. I'm actually looking to get back there this year. We'll talk about that later. But you are a thought leader in this space. How do you keep learning? How do you keep your finger on the pulse? Because I know when you go to these conferences, after you're done on stage, you don't listen to any other people. You only care about what you're talking about, and then you're out of there.
That's not true.
I'm kidding.
The reality is, the big part of I've considered myself a student every time I turn up to an event, because I know what I know, but I don't know what everyone else knows. And I learned so much from having lunch yesterday, from having coffees, and just having chats with people. And the missing sort of thing that I have is I'm basically plugged into the matrix all the time. So yes. I'm reading content, all the internet, and I'm trying to just process all this information. But it's very important I corroborate that with what people are telling me on the ground.
Let's talk about that for a minute. If anyone's not tuned in, Hung Lee's Recruiting Brain Food, you must
subscribe. Recruitingbrainfood.com. Make sure you subscribe.
I get it every Sunday night, which would be my Monday morning.
Yeah.
Is that when it comes in?
That's right.
Usually the first thing I read in the bathroom every morning and delete immediately. No, I'm kidding. What a way to start my week.
No better place for it, man.
It's comprehensive. But I want to get back to something, and this is important for everybody. When we talk about these events and conferences, you need to step out of your bubble as a practitioner, because you're in the trenches, you're in the weeds, and you need to learn. And these conferences are great, and you could sit there and learn a ton from all these incredible speakers. But the real magic, as you said, is in networking and sitting at the breakfast this morning. And step out of your comfort zone. Make sure you sit at a table with people you don't know.
100%. That's what I did at the Candies event yesterday. There was a bunch of people I knew. It was like, you know what? I'm not going to sit with you guys. There's an empty table. I'll sit there, and whoever sits down had a great conversation with a bunch of people that are around me. So yeah, it's good practice to do that. Get out of your comfort zone, but also listen to other people's stories. Like, how are they coping with the world as it is? What is the world of recruitment looking like for them? They're the ones actually doing the job. So they're the experts. Even though I walk in with that label, I do see myself as someone who's distant from that, because I haven't done that.
You're not a practitioner these days.
Exactly. It's been 10 years, 15 years since I've been doing this. I learn from them, and it's very important, therefore, I do these events, because that's education for me.
Let's talk about what you've been listening to and learning over the past few years. The diversity talk, there's the technology talk, there's the economy talk, there's the politics, there's the market in general there. Let's start with technology. And listen, if you go to any of these conferences in the last few years, AI nonstop. What's your high-level take? Is AI going to put all of us recruiters out of business? And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it won't. I've come across a couple of moats which human recruiters I think can be very defensible. However, I think that AI will make recruiting a lot more efficient, and that efficiency will take out a number of people from the industry for sure. So in other words, if you want to look at on aggregate the numbers of people doing the job of recruiting, let's say that peaked at 2021, I don't think we hit those peaks again.
No.
I think we're going to come down quite some way to a smaller group of people doing the job of recruiting, because a lot of the labor-intensive and time-intensive work that recruiters are currently doing, I think a lot of that's going to be eaten by technology. And it's a good thing. And hopefully the recruiting work that will be left will actually be slightly higher upstream, slightly higher value, but probably less people on aggregate doing it.
And it comes down to upskilling too as a recruiter also, not just being a sourcer, talent filler, but being an advisor and also immersing yourself in technology so you can understand how to be, for example, if you're using different AI tech, it's not just Boolean searches anymore. It's real language into these searches, how to use these tools, how to be an advisor. And another angle is how to be a stronger business partner to understand the business that you're recruiting for, and just being able to come into an organization and add more value than just recruiting. Now, as you said, traditional sourcers, that division of folks, they're in trouble because the technology is there. I'm making a very general blanket statement about sourcing. The technology is there. I use it every single day as a in the trenches practitioner, and it's incredible, the tech that's out there. But you have to learn it. You have to use it. I truly think that if we embrace this technology and we're a good recruiter, our value from a relationship perspective is going to have more air to breathe and shine and really make stronger connections within the organization.
I think that's the opportunity, but I don't think it necessarily happens as a natural outcome of artificial intelligence.
No.
So one thing that concerns me a little bit is that we have a dystopic view and a utopic view. So you have the dystopian guys that say it's all over, AI is going to rule everything, this is terrible. Then you have the utopia guys who say that's not going to happen. AI is going to come in, it's going to free us to do all of these higher value things. I would say neither of those visions is really true. I think what's going to happen is AI will definitely make us more efficient, but it does not necessarily mean that we end up doing the high value work, because the business might decide, oh, we don't need recruiters, or oh, we decide, why don't you do even more work with even less people?
Right, that is a real concern.
Absolutely. To do more with less in 2024 should translate into do even more with less in 2025.
I do less with less.
What we've got to do is negotiate. We have to really negotiate for some return from the efficiency gain. So that means that we have to really be clear as to what the bargain is when we're dealing with the instruction to become more efficient.
I love that hot take. And I truly believe also, if you want to pull out from this timeline, and I'll use a baseball analogy here, I think we really are in the first at-bat of the first inning of this. Now, yes, AI has been around since 56, machine learning and everything, but when we're talking about it in the HR and the TA tech world, we're still relatively early stage in that, and it's going to be an evolution, and it's going to be industry dependent on what they're working on. The fear that I have, let's switch it for a little bit, coming from AI, the perspective from the candidate, what I am seeing as a recruiter who looks at a lot of resumes, candidates are, especially if they're out of work, they're desperate. They will try anything. They're using all these tools. There's a lot of predatory products out there that are overpromising. And what they're doing is they're taking very high level, taking a job description, taking a resume, and they're morphing it together to make that resume as effective as possible for that job description without qualifying that person for the skill set. And I've seen a lot of candidates come through, and I look at their resume, and I could tell if it's AI generated, because I'm like, that person versus their LinkedIn, knowing the company they worked at, they didn't do any of those things. And it's scary. What's happening now is we're getting to the point of bot versus bot. You have the candidates using the tools, you have the companies using the tools, and it's bot on bot, and we're going to hit a wall.
I think that's a normal thing, though. Like, that's an expected outcome of AI, where basically you get different sort of interests using artificial intelligence, not against each other, but to negotiate with each other. So what will happen is that our method of discovering information is going to change. Mm-hmm. Instead of having kind of a dumb interface where you're typing into Google or whatever it is to try and retrieve information, you're going to instruct your bot to do something, and the bot's going to go and interact with other bots, and then at some point you'll be invoked to say, actually, here's something that's worth your human attention. And that may be because there's a human being finally emerged on the other side. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing that we have some automated agent helping us to do that discovery. I think it's probably one of those where it's going to be necessary because this arms race it will go exponential because it makes sense to then use it because the other guy's using it. And as you keep going, you'll end up, the folks that aren't using it will be severely handicapped. So that's inevitable in my view. Probably it makes sense at this point to think about how effective your bots can be. Like,
the best bot wins, rock and sock and bots.
And how does that work? Is it based on how much you can pay, or is it based on how much you train it? Is it based on what exactly? So there's ethics involved, there's equality involved.
This episode of the podcast, live from ERE 2024 in Anaheim, is brought to you by Juicebox.ai. Recruiting just got smarter with Juicebox, the company behind People GPT. With AI sourcing powered by generative AI, you simply tell People GPT who you are looking for in a natural language. Need a senior data scientist with healthcare experience? Done. Looking for a creative marketing manager based out of Austin? Easy. People GPT instantly creates a search and evaluates profiles, saving you hours of time and effort. Already trusted by over 500 companies and agencies, from boutique recruiting firms to Fortune 500 TA teams, People GPT is revolutionizing the way to find talent. Ready to level up your sourcing game? Use code POZ20, that's POZ20, for an exclusive 20% discount. Juicebox, where hiring meets the future. Start sourcing smarter today. Visit juicebox.ai. Thanks.
There's so many factors here too. And then if you think about it too, companies are attracted by the shiny object, right? And everyone's using AI. We need to use AI on it. Some companies may not need it for what you're doing, what you are. And they go and they invest into it. Next thing you know, they don't know how to use it. They don't have the right support. They don't have the right training. They didn't have the budget for it. Now you're stuck with these shiny tools that you thought you needed, but you may not. These features that you think you needed. So we're in this stage of discovery, in some cases overkill. And it's just a fascinating place to watch. What do you think, we'll call it 5 years from now, what is the role of the modern recruiter going to look like within an internal recruiter in an organization?
So what's going to happen is the old school personnel manager is going to come back. So you remember back before there was such a thing as an internal recruiter, recruitment was done by HR. And all they did was just post an advert out and then pass the CV along. That function comes back because what will happen is, and it will be a very small, insignificant job. The jobs that you have to advertise, you'll advertise, but they'll be handled by automation. The response will be handled by automation. They'll be automated kind of screening. Only after a series of screening events do certain candidates ever hit the scrutiny of a human being. That human being would not be a recruiter. That will be directly the hiring manager. So the advertised jobs, I think, will do that. Where recruiters will persist is where we move upstream to exec hiring, to evergreen sort of jobs that are critically important to the business, to succession planning for core competencies within the business that we typically don't do. Like, for instance, you're managing a software engineering team, or your organization is a bunch of software engineers. You probably need to have a succession plan against every single senior person there, but we don't do that currently. We wait until the guy leaves, and then suddenly we scramble around because it's disastrous.
And that causes attrition because someone's doing 3 jobs while we try to backfill.
Correct. So I think recruitment ends up being a lot more looking like what it was back in the pre-internet days. It'll resemble basically exec search. So we'll have that combination of old HR manager and exec search style, even though we'll do more than just exec. It will be just critical hiring across the business.
So interesting too. The light bulb went off in my head because I really haven't thought about that component of it from we call a large to mid-sized organization. It's how do you use, we're getting in the weeds here, how do you use those tools that will look at an organization, see those people in there, what their functions are from the job description and the skill set, and not reach out to candidates, but be ready to go to have this kind of always updating pipeline where it's, oh shit, Hung just gave us 2 weeks notice, boop. Instead of, we need to scramble and find it. We already had that ready to go. And maybe we're doing a little bit of pre-employer branding or a little bit of,
this is it,
a little bit of outreach. I'm going to talk about that in my keynote later about podcasting, how it's treat your employer branding. It's a brand and you're advertising and it's the outward appearance here. Let's bring it home here. We could do this all day and all night and bring this little camera with us tonight, but I don't think, maybe they do want to see that. I think they'll just see us all going to bed at 9:45 tonight. But
yeah, it would disappoint the fans out there that think we party on like idiots, but actually we're in bed by 9:30, so it's nothing's going to happen.
We're being dead serious here. We're in Anaheim or across the street from Disneyland. I think a couple people went, but we're a pretty team bunch here. What is scaring you? What's keeping you up at night these days in this space? What's the big concern?
What is the big concern? There's a lot of concerns out there, and I don't want to be a doom-mongers per se in terms of where we're at.
But we got to talk about it.
For sure. So number one concern, obviously, I think in the United States, the culture war is basically very much explicit. Now, I think an underrated problem that TA and HR have is that our industry, I believe, is perceived to be adversary of the future administration. So in other words, Donald Trump and his kind of senior kind of allies perceive TA and HR pretty much to be a manifestation of bureaucracy that needs to be eliminated. So I think we're probably not conscious of that. We'll see evidence. We'll get reminded of this as things happen. But I think that will be very evident. That's an existential challenge to us. Now, we need to think, okay, the direct impact of politicians is less significant than the indirect impact. So what might happen, for instance, in terms of direct impact is probably not much. Public sector, I can imagine, will get hammered.
Right.
But the indirect impact will be a lot of people in the private sector will say, you know what, it looks like we can do without HR.
Works for them. Maybe it'll work for us from an efficiency and cost saving perspective.
Correct. So the big side is going to come out. So the TA and HR world, which really has been tough for 2.5 years, I think is going to be tough for the foreseeable, right? So there's we can't wait for external world to improve. Now, part of the thing that makes me motivated is that is the lay of the land. It's very good that we know that's the lay of the land because it means that should mobilize us to action. And the action we've got to take is become AI-enabled, for instance, become much better networked in terms
upskill, consider pivots.
Do all of those things, like expand the scope of the role, expand your own sort of horizontally in terms of the types of people or types of capabilities we're bringing into the business. All of those things, I think, quite important for us to do. Because I think that the opportunities will continue to shrink. And unfortunately, there's going to be, at the rhetorical level, is going to be tough. The rhetorical environment against HR and TA, I think, is going to be tough for the next foreseeable.
I love it.
And that's a potential demoralizing factor for the industry. So we've got to G up. We've got to keep connected.
And we need more of these opportunities to network and be together. Let me throw a last little kind of wild card question at you. Hungly is throwing HungFest. It's the first event of its time. What would be your perfect industry event? What would it look like?
It's hard to say. There's so
many of these. Try to pick the best parts of it.
These events are amazing, and I really admire everyone for doing events like this. So great for ERE for putting this event on and rolling forward. Fantastic stuff. I think the best events I've been part of have always had the community first focus, meaning that there's always stuff happening before, during, and after the main event. So there's a main feature, where you typically have expo, you have talks, you have all that stuff, but then you have all of the other stuff around it, which may not necessarily be content related, but it stimulates those sort of relationships that really make the difference in your own mindset and your own career going forward. I think those things are irreplaceable. If HungFest was ever to happen, it would be something like that. It would focus a lot on those sort of non-scheduled, non-scripted events. Maybe there'd be a few keynotes, of course, but the main thing would be having the content.
Where would it take place?
I can't stop thinking about Barbados or somewhere like that. I'm talking Caribbean islands.
Shorts, t-shirts.
Obviously, I come from UK, and right now it's November, coming to December. I have no interest in being there. But yes, tropical island, please. That would be where we want to have it.
The one and only Hung Lee on the podcast for a certain time. Where could folks find you? Where could they connect? Where could they learn more?
The best place is recruitingbrainfood.com. Subscribe to the newsletter. You can email me from there.
Unbelievable. Third time's a charm. I want to wrap this conference up. I want to thank the folks over at ERE, Michael, Glenn, and the team for your hospitality, your partnership. We certainly appreciate you. I want to thank our sponsor, Juicebox.ai. Check them out. It is a fantastic tool. I utilize them every day. I want to thank our friends at ERE. I want to thank my man, Evan White. And this has been the podcast at ERE 2024, Anaheim, California. And we are out.
Wisdom is forever. But for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.